Today on True Patriot Love, I'm lucky enough to be joined by Mike Wixon to talk about something that's been on my mind for quite a while, productivity and minimum wage. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Paul. Yeah, no, it's something we've talked about pretty consistently over the last couple of months, and certainly over the last 2 weeks. We were trying to think about how to tee up this show because it's not a really pretty picture, to be honest with you. Minimum wage at a distance seems like a gift, like something we're entitled to, or something we fought for as a nation. But some of the ramifications of it against other markets and against how our country's doing financially, it's a little scary, actually.
It is. Remember, I was coming in and I was talking to Christoph, putting the show together today. And we were in the car and he said to me, well, why? Why did minimum wage come to bear? What was the rationale for it? And I said to him, remember the days when they used to give you a hot dog for your vote? It got replaced by minimum wage. So we started doing minimum wage by policy rather than by productivity. Right. And over time, it became almost an election campaign item. So if you vote for me, I'm going to give you $1 a year. If you vote for me, I'm going to increase. So all these people are like, wow, that's great. And it's really wonderful. But what they don't realize, it actually reduces their wage. And so I'm going to take you through it.
Yeah,
so,
explain that one too.
Okay. So, and I've said on previous shows, I've lived in Canada and lived in the U.S. So I've seen it both ways. So when I was living in the U.S., and I lived in a number of states from the west to the east coast, the minimum wage in most states is around $7.25. You say, oh my God, I couldn't live on $7.25. No, I agree. And only 20 out of the 50 states that have minimum wage are above $13. So it's not as high as ours, right? Because right now, federally, as of April 1, we're at $18.15 federally. Right. And provincially, I'll give you Ontario, which is going up in the fall to $17.95. And BC, which is going up in the summer to $18.25. So we range between the high $16 to $18. That's kind of where we range in Canada.
Okay.
Now, the interesting part that in 2025, the average annual salary in the U.S. was $59,000. This is in U.S. dollars. In Canada, it was $40,000 U.S. dollars. So the average Canadian made about $19,000 less than the average American.
Is that because the average American minimum wage doesn't factor in productivity leads to higher wages?
Exactly. So, and that's really why. So if you look at it, this is some crazy stats. So our GDP per capita in Canada is $54,000. In the US, it's $85,000. So that's what we produce per person.
So okay, let me average that down against the Canadian productivity and our GDP. Is about $25 an hour value out of each of our employees, but our federal minimum wage is $18.15.
Yeah.
So somehow you have to make your business profitable.
Yeah, by paying,
keep the overhead, and still stay competitive with very little to work with. Where do those dollars come from?
Well, they don't. And that's why you see businesses continually leave Canada and not come here and not reinvest in Canada. So why productivity goes down is because I don't reinvest in technology. I don't reinvest in equipment. I don't reinvest in training. Those are all the things that don't make you a more productive society. And by forcing our minimum wage up, you squeeze out the ability to do that, right? Which ultimately leads to lower wages for Canadians. So, I started digging into it and I'm going through it. And as I'm going through it, it's interesting because the output per person from 1980 to 2024 between Canada and the U.S. is roughly $385,000 U.S. per person.
Okay.
Right. So, you look over those 24 years. If we would have, 44 years, if we would have actually kept pace with the U.S.
Right.
That would have equated to another $14 trillion in economic output for Canada.
Now, okay.
So now when I say so this is the interesting part. So that's $14 trillion of output over 44 years that as as we became less productive with Americans, we weren't producing as much per person, which
Right.
equated to $385,000 difference per person.
And that's when compensation,
Started to dip.
right.
So all of a sudden, we started to make less as Canadians than Americans over this time period. So our gap widened, right? So all of a sudden we are. So this is the crazy thing. If you look at that output and you figure out that it's a 33% tax to GDP on it, so 33% tax rate, we would have been able to put into the public revenue fund roughly $4.5 trillion.
Wow. Over the last 40 years.
So what that does is the government can use that $4.5 trillion to now reduce your tax, leave more disposable income in your wallet. So now
Create a pension system that's actually.
create a pension system. So now what happens is your dollars don't go farther, or they would have gone farther. So they could pay you less, but you could actually buy more.
Right. The dollar had better value here in our own country.
So that's what the Americans, so if you look at what the Americans did over the same time period. Now, move that forward. So then you go from now, so then from 2024 to 2030, because it's grown so much, the gap, we're going to fall behind another $224,000 per person in US dollars, which equates to $9 trillion or $3 trillion that we could have used again to benefit our own citizens for tax relief and everything else. You keep going on. It's crazy. If we look at the 50 years from 1980 to 2030, we're talking roughly about $7.5 trillion that we lost that could have gone into our economy and infrastructure and benefit to the citizens. It's a huge dollar amount, Mike.
Well,
look
at Norway. They took the tact of, all right, we're going to live within means, create healthcare, but we're also going to continue to develop our coffers based on resources.
Right.
Now, it could easily sound like we're saying Canadians are not productive, but that productivity is tied to a lot of things. Right? The productivity of a human being is tied to the environment they're in, what they're actually doing, what the laws allow them to do, what is expected of them in a job. That's another thing. We do a lot of job describing here that kind of hems people into a very specific job, meaning that we don't get as much value from them per hour as if they were multifunctional.
Yes. Yeah.
So a lot of these factors we need to consider.
Well, yeah, and so it's interesting that you go there. So then I took a look at 12 ways Canadian work culture differs from Americans, right? And so some of that, and those lead to some of the productivity differences. So, which is interesting. So the first one that I found was annual work hours. So, and this is unfortunately, Canadians roughly work 5 hours less a week than Americans.
Okay.
5 hours, right? So
at $18 an hour,
yes,
$5,200 out of the Canadian's pocket right there.
Well, think about it. So then, in a year, if Canadians work 1,690 hours, Americans work over 1,790 hours.
Wow. That's significant.
It is significant. And quite frankly, it's hard to be a productive nation if no one's working a 40-hour work week.
Right.
Now, we all say we're working, a 40-hour work week. But, I know from business I have, and I've lived in both countries, we do not work a 40-hour work week. So then that's a challenge. Union contracts, and this is the difference. Again, the U.S. and it varies by state, but overall across Canada and the United States, we have a 20% coverage in unions in Canada and only a 10% in the United States.
Okay.
So
we have a lot of friction from unions driving up wages, reducing what can be done on the work. Like I'll give you an example. If you go to put an event on at a convention center, you have to use the union guys for every single thing. It's a laborious process. You never get what you want, and they're paid at a union rate you wouldn't pay the guy working with you to do the same job.
But that happens in the U.S. And honestly, a lot of that wage kind of forced wage increase that happens in any environment, would probably, and this is what we're finding when we're looking at minimum wage. If you policy direct wages, you tend to drive them down,
Right.
Because you're driving them too fast and not in line with productivity. So if you wage increases, we all want. We want them for our own people. I know my businesses. I don't pay anyone minimum wage. I pay everyone above minimum wage because my business dictates that I can do that. Right. So everyone's, makes more than minimum wage, of course. But, that's because productivity is high. And I keep a highly productive team that drives my profit margins high enough that I can actually pass it down.
But you know what, Paul? I think that we take a look at minimum wage across the country, and it's not the independent guys like you that should be expected to make these changes. Take a look at federal employment in this country. Take a look at how many people are employed in healthcare alone. Wages and unions and major industries and major employment centers in our country are union bound, are heavily endorsed by human rights, work rights, and all of these things that are very important. But the pendulum seems to have swung too far at a time where we don't produce enough per person in Canada to make it worthwhile. And that's leading to job cuts. Mm-hmm. It's leading to people who normally would have a full-time job and a decent wage working at Tim Hortons for minimum wage because it's the highest paying thing they can get unqualified.
Right.
That drives our youth out of part-time jobs that normally would have been at Tim Hortons or wherever. The effect trickles down and down and down.
Yep. And then honestly, on the corporate side, Mike, is you're forcing minimum wage up. Who's paying the minimum wage? So it becomes a policy based on an election drive, and all of a sudden, corporations are paying it.
Right.
It's not the money. So it is another form of taxation that's implied on you in an indirect way.
Taxation, a couple more dollars an hour, more tax to pay on behalf of your employee, more tax your employee has to pay.
Exactly.
So
then you reduce your labor, you reduce your investment, and all of a sudden your productivity is going down. Now we try to subvert that, or we try to go around that in Canada by creating these tax incentive programs. We do a lot of that now. The last budget we went through, there's a lot of billions and billions and billions of dollars of ways you can directly expense your machinery. You can buy equipment. We do all these programs. But quite frankly, the major cost for more corporations is the human resources that actually make the products, right? So that's the challenge. Another thing I found interesting was vacation days. Believe it or not, Canadians receive 19 and use them all, and Americans get roughly 17 days. But Americans traditionally don't use all their vacations. That was something I had to get used to when I came back to Canada. I would finish the year, and if one of my team had 3 weeks vacation, they wouldn't use it. They would use 2.5. They use 2 in a couple of days. But it's kind of culturally that if you give them more vacation, they use less.
No, less than you give them.
Yeah, and they'll take, if you offer them the money, some states you have to, some states you don't. But if you offer them the money, they'll take it graciously, but they won't ask you for it.
Interesting.
So that's more of an American thing. In Canada, everyone uses all their vacation plus.
Oh, and last year I had 2 days left over, and in '86 I missed a day of vacation. Yeah. We tend to have these systems that accumulate our earnings of time and compensation, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Work from home, remote work. Canadians love it. Americans don't.
Why do we love it so much? I don't understand. I guess the winter, the weather.
We double up Americans in the amount of work from home jobs we have. So we have like 26% of our work environment is work from home. Americans only have 13. So we double it up.
Do you want to work from home, or would you rather work with colleagues? Can I ask you this? You can be honest. Okay, give me hands in the air for work with work at work. Yeah, I think so. We got a unanimous thing. It's a very unusual thing in my mind that people think it's okay not to go to work nowadays.
Yeah,
I get it. We made a change, but that change, the reason for that change is over now. We all got vaccinated. We all get over the cold.
Yep.
We don't want to go back to work. We're not more productive at work, Paul?
I feel we are. You know,
sorry.
I don't
came
have,
at you on this. My apologies.
I don't have businesses where I can stay home, right? So,
No,
so I don't have the option.
But I do think that there's more productivity, and I understand people have to work. They have to get to work, and it's hard to do.
Well, if you want to create productivity, and I know this is the Premier of Ontario always says this in his speeches, you know, having the person come back and run the sandwich shop, run the diner, all the services that tie to people who actually have to come back to work creates the economy, creates productivity. It's a circle, right? It's a circle.
We've got transit systems to pay for.
It's an ecosystem.
Infrastructure, yeah.
Yeah, and you have to make that ecosystem work with people working within the ecosystem. Staying at home, and if you have 26% of your job staying at home, it's very hard to keep a productive economy.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Public transit versus commuting. That was an interesting one, I thought. We're much more likely to find a way to take public transit and walking and biking and everything than Americans by almost 20%.
They just drive to work.
They want to get to work as quickly as they can.
Right.
And their punctuality to work because they don't have to deal with all the messed up commuting. And I found this was interesting. This is when I had a business in Chicago, I found it weird. Chicago, a big city, I'm a lot like Toronto, bad congestion, bad roadways, bad everything else, all cars.
Nobody even tried.
Literally, it was very little commute.
Wow.
Very little.
And they have an extensive rail system in Chicago.
They do. It's
people
due to the violence that people gave up on it many years ago. They're trying to resurrect it, but it hasn't come back.
Right.
But you don't see like you see the trains in the morning. You see a few people, but they're not packed. And so literally they adjusted by having one-way lanes into the city and one way. So they took highways and split them into like 3 lanes in, 1 lane out in the morning.
Okay.
And then the other way. So they found a way to kind of get everyone into the core.
Actually.
Yeah, it's a really good way to deal with it. They have some really good traffic control and light control.
But we do kind of lean against, the transit was the train didn't.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's an hour out of your work day.
Yeah. Work days off. We went the other way than the Americans, honestly. We actually decided, and we did this in the public sector, that people on their days off can't answer their phone, can't use their computer, can't. So you almost get penalized from working on your days off in the public service, right?
Okay.
Americans are much different than Canadians, radically different on this front. When Americans are on holidays or vacation days, they actually work. So they actually work twice as much as Canadians when they did the stats. So 66% of Canadians do not plan to work at all on vacation. Mm-hmm. Only 37% of Americans say that they won't work. The rest will work.
They'll pick up the messages.
Return the calls, try to make sales, keep the ball, do conference calls. They'll kind of work through it. They'll do a workcation. Much different than we are. Breaks during the day. So this was interesting. The next two I'm going to accumulate. And I did notice that when I came back. Americans don't take their lunch. They primarily eat where they are, and they don't traditionally take all their breaks. We do both. We do both here, and we're very proud of it. You know, we take our half-hour to an hour lunch. We take our 50-minute breaks.
Paul?
Yeah.
I hate to interrupt, but it is my break time.
But it is.
What? Yeah, there's a lot of that I've noticed. Yeah.
But you figure, part of that stat, the 5 hours in a week, difference, the 35 hours we work.
You can see where it's coming from.
Oh, you can see where it's coming from. Culturally, we've but we've embedded these things in with regulations, right? We've got a lot of, we have a lot of labor laws and a lot of regulations that we are very strict on from a business perspective.
That's my point. I think that Canadians would be more productive given the choice. But your union won't let you do this. Well, your job description won't allow you to do that. Well,
it's someone, and as someone watching this, I don't want to make it sound like I'm against any of these things. But what I'm for is I'm for the people who work with me and work around me making more money. I don't like the fact that there's almost a $20,000 divide by what American makes versus a Canadian makes.
Right.
I want Canadians to make as much or more.
Because you want them to be able to spread their wings in their workplace.
Well, the selfish part for me, number one, from a business perspective, I get more productivity. Number two, if they work more in the country, the output per person grows in Canada. my public service costs, my road improvements, my taxes, my property taxes, all those things go down, right? Because I can generate enough output that I can actually pay tax on it, and my tax base gets higher.
I was going to say that's the one part of the business that's not going to change. You're going to have to pay that no matter what. So the closer you can get to that line or past it, the better everybody does. You can give raises. You can give more time off if that's what people want.
And we don't want to, it's interesting because, this has been coming up. The productivity and the GDP per capita and all these things come up from both parties. Primarily, I know Pierre Poilievre on his podcast trips that he's been doing lately has been bringing it up on the podcast. But I find it interesting. He never goes into the root cause. Today we're going into the root cause. So, this is what kind of tweaked me on it as I've been listening to him. And he's right. Our productivity is low.
Yeah.
I'm not disagreeing with that.
And once again, that's not saying Canadians are not productive. The means and the system that we've built is preventative to us actually getting beyond that. How many people do you know would love more overtime hours, but they're told by the workplace they're not allowed? Or somebody who wants to actually do more hours in a week at their own position to kind of grow it, they're told, no, unless you're here for paid hours, we can't have you here. There's so many rules and regulations that keep us less productive.
Right, and they do. And those are the things, the red tape that we constantly talk about, red tape commissions to get those rules and everything off. I really ask if someone, take a look at the comparison between U.S. wages and Canadian wages, and then really study it if you're doubting what we're saying. Because when you really dig into it, you see it pretty transparent that that's the reason why. It becomes, and forcing minimum wage through policy versus productivity is the key element. Now, a couple of the other ones. Communication styles. So that's an interesting one. And I've brought this up on other shows, and polite language. There are two that I lump, and I'm going to call this basically conflict resolution, polite language, and communication styles.
No.
Right? A American meeting is very about finding a solution based. It's not about sitting and talking and having long meetings. They're very cutting meetings. The polite language traditionally isn't used. It's basically the solution is found. They're told to move forward. They're told to go in that direction, and then everyone gets out of the room
and goes.
It's a different style. Conflict resolution, honestly, is a lot of times in the U.S. very argumentative. You're watching, and again, I bring this up when we sit in the morning all the time, because everyone comes in and goes, did you see what Trump posted today, right? And
Canadians are stunned.
And he's dressed up like Jesus on an AI
wow, that was
post
pretty
today.
Wild. You got to admit, he does some wild stuff.
He does some wild stuff, but that that is the culture. They're the polite, diplomatic, long-winded, solution-based team building scenarios usually don't occur, right? They got to get to the solution. They got to get profitable, and they got to get productive.
And feelings really aren't considered, I think, often in these processes. You might be the guy who's the focal point. Paul, it's on you. You've got to get it together. You failed. Everybody, we need a solution for what Paul's screwing up on.
Get it done. Yeah, that's more of the rhetoric, right? Yeah. So those cultural aspects and the thing we brought up make for the difference in the productivity. It really does. And I think we have to go back and look at it. Now, I'm not saying we need to do less holidays. I'm not saying we need to do less hours, or we definitely need to do more hours per work. That's the other thing. When the day's up, when they found in the studies, Americans don't go home, whether they're paid or not.
They continue on.
They
go
done. Home when the job is complete, not when their hours are complete. So when they did all the studies and when they came out in the different studies, they found out that Americans were more task oriented and less hours oriented. So it didn't matter if they got paid for 8 and they needed to take 9, they'd stay and do the 9.
They feel it's on them. I didn't get my thing completed today. I could have. I got to get it done.
I got to get this task done because I don't want to come tomorrow and have to,
Hold up the rest of the team.
hold up the rest of the team. I want to keep this job, quite frankly. It's very competitive in the job market for certain jobs, depending on what you're in. So I want to work that to get through it. It's a difference it's a productivity-driven cycle, right? It's the capitalist market. So we are starting to fall behind because we're not endorsing all those things.
It's a tough pill to swallow that we need to be more productive.
Yes.
And that minimum wage is not the answer to this. But as you pull it apart, the orange in each section has merit that we need to reconsider this. Because if Americans are making more per capita by actually just earning more per capita and generating more per capita, the likelihood is we're going to get more contracts internationally here.
Well, and hats off. I know she's gone now, but Chrystia Freeland brought this up, and I've said it on many shows.
Wait, are you complimenting Chrystia Freeland?
I am. She brought it up, and she got panned in the House many times, about 3 or 4 times. And she said, listen, we got to focus on productivity. We got to start benchmarking ourselves. And everyone just kind of eyes glazed over. She kind of went on. And, everyone criticized, you want to get rid of this. You want to do this. No, you are better off without it. Quite frankly, you're better off to work on productivity, and you'll make more money if you do. And that's what she was trying to say. And the country will be better off.
You can't just print money.
Well, look at Mike.
Because where does the money come from in the end?
Look at our Canadian reserves dollar-wise. The IMF, right, came out the other day. Our reserves are being basically sold off, right? Our valuation of our dollar is dumping at the moment. It's dumping because the world is picking up on our lack of productivity, among other things. Our debt is getting too high and our productivity is going too low. As Canadians, we got to figure that out. We have all these conventions and we do all this great conversation about what's going on and affordable this and affordable that. This is one we really have to look at right now and say, okay, how do we get productivity up, and how do we stop borrowing so much money to keep the country afloat? Because that's what's causing the devaluation of our dollar. And that's where, quite frankly, Pierre Poilievre, when he says it on these podcasts, he's bang on. But he's, being a politician, he's not taking it further and doing the root cause analysis. That is the root cause.
So we always like to be, hypothetical solvers of these problems. What do you think the solution is here?
Solution is, I think you do away with minimum wage. Quite frankly, it's high enough now. The projects that you are as a government promoting and putting your money behind now have to be measured on productivity growth. So there's no point in putting into another park, another theater, another project. You need to put it into items that have increased the output of Canadians per capita to get it at least back on par. Get rid of the
infrastructure, mining.
Yep, you got it.
Build into the country the things that are going to make us more productive.
Right. Red tape for safety, you got to keep. Red tape for just having red tape, you got to get rid of. Employers need the flexibility to have people work to produce things. If all they're doing is spending all their time stuck in red tape they're going to pick up and leave. They're not going to invest any money in the nation. Those are the things you got to get rid of.
Sounds like a good solution. Thanks for this, man.
Thank you.
Patriotic means looking out for each other and fixing things together.
True patriotism is being in the country you love, surrounded by people you love, and great weather.
Being a patriot is being a part of your community and caring for it.
It doesn't matter who you are or where you're from. Patriotism is the one thing we all share.
It's okay to be critical of government and still be a patriot.
It's gratitude to your country.
Of course I'm a patriot. I'm Canadian. It's my home.
Well, actually, true patriot love is the mission.